So before we start connecting all the sensors, we're going to disconnect the power from the data logger. So we're just going to go ahead and unplug these cables. Now remember, be careful when working with cables and with electricity. You don't want to cause a problem or a fire or anything like that. So now we're ready to connect the temperature sensor. And so the temperature sensor really goes into this box first, to the shield, which is called an aspirated shield. And I'm just going to show you how it is. It has two parts. It has the shield itself, which is this umbrella, and then it has this tube. So we first take this off, take these clips off, and then we can reveal inside this tube where the sensor is going to go in. So we'll install that in. And these cables go here. Now, Joanna, before going to the field, it's better to install the temperature sensors inside the radiation shield, because this process is a little complicated and it can be difficult to do in the field. So as I told you before, the radiation sensors go in here, in this tube. They go in there. They have these brackets which attach the sensor to the wall of the tube. And then the cables go in here. So let's first get rid of this to open up this box, and then I'll show you what we need to do. So first this is the cabling box of the shield. There's a couple of screws in here which I've loosened already, so we can easily do this quickly. And we can take the box off, the cap off, sorry. And there it is. You'll see there's about 12 little connectors there that look very similar to the connectors in the data logger. First, we need to cut down this cable. This cable is too long to put into the shield. In many cases, you will receive a cable that is shorter already, but in this case, it was too long. So we'll just put in the shield in there. And more or less it goes down this way. And so we only need about this much of cable. Otherwise, it gets too much. We're going to have too much cable, and it's going to interfere with the fan. So let's cut this cable and peel all the cables, and then we'll connect all this stuff here. Okay, so now we have peeled these cables, cut the cable, we peeled them out. They should be the same colors as here, as the original sensor. So yellow, blue, white, black, clear, red. And we're going to connect them to, if this is sensor 1, we're going to connect it to the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the box. Okay? Let's see how the numbers are ordered in the box. This is a detail of the cabling box. As you can see, pin number 1 and pin number 2 are here. Pin number 3 and pin number 4 are here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? One thing that is important is that once you cut these cables, if these cables are connected to the box, sometimes you want to remove the sensor out of the box, but you don't want to take the cables out. So one thing that is important is that the length is enough to be able to remove the sensor out without having to disconnect the cables. Okay? So make sure it's at least a little bit more, maybe 2.5 times the length of the sensor. Okay, so this little plastic ring is going to hold the sensor to the wall of the shield. So now we put the ring in there, and we're going to slide the sensor inside and then push down. And we can push as far as it could go. It will go probably about there. And that's it. So let's make sure that these cables are long enough so that you can have enough maneuvering space inside this little box. Otherwise, you'll have problems trying to get all the cables connected. Okay? So at least about 5 centimeters of cable left out so you can move around easily. Okay, now the temperature sensors are both in. It looks a little tight, but they're okay. And all the cables are now out here. So now what we have to do is we have to move the cables out of the way into this area so that way we can replace the cover. So let's do that now and see how it looks. Okay, so now all the cables have to go out from this side. Then when we replace the cover, they should be underneath this wedge here that has a little bit of like a little rubber that holds them there. And then we can tighten up the cabling box. Make sure everything is tight. Done. So now that everything is done, we're going to replace the cover. Now these cables need to be tightened down so that they don't interfere with the fan. And finally we close it. You can take this to the field like this. So we need to connect all these cables coming from the shield to the data logger. And there are two types of connectors in the shield. I put the shield upside down so we can see them more clearly. One of them is a 4-pin connector that carries power and speed information about the fan. The other one is a 10-pin connector that carries the signal coming from the sensors. So this carries the actual measurements of temperature coming from the sensors that are inside this tube. So let's look at detail a little bit more at the cables. The first cable is a 4-pin cable, as you can see, and we're gonna put it in. I'll show you how to put it in. It's very easy. You align the slot here with the slot on the plug, and then you push it, and then you tighten it up. Then we'll see what we have to do at the other end. So at the other end of the cable we have 4 little cables, and we put here the diagram, the cabling diagram showing where each of these cables go. One cable is for power, the red. The black and the green are grounds, and then the white is a cable that carries the speed information of the fan. It is important to connect the red cable to the switch 12 volts, not to just the 12 volts. So finally we connect the pulse cable, the white cable, to the pulse slot, P2, and that carries information about the speed of the fan, so it's very important to have that one in. Okay, the other cable is a 10-pin cable and carries the signal, as we said before. Now this cable, there's only one way to insert it correctly into this connector. You see that it has a few slots. The slots are in here, and then there's a few grooves in here. So you have to align those in order to make this work. So basically we align it first, then we push, and then we tighten this screw a little bit until it doesn't go anywhere. On the other end of this 10-pin cable we have these 10 cables, but you can see that they end in these flat connectors, and we can't use these connectors for the data logger. So we have to remove them and peel the cables individually. So we'll do that with a little tool here, with a little cutting cable tool. So we snap the cable, we snap those connectors off, and then using the smallest possible gauge here, we peel about 1 centimeter, maybe a little less, maybe 7 millimeters of cable. You can see, and we twist it a little bit. So this is how we This is the cable that we're going to insert into the data logger. Now, to connect the cables to the data logger, after we peel them off, that we've seen here, we have that here, then we have to follow this diagram, this cabling diagram, and this is also available in the climate protocol. You see that the left-hand side of this diagram shows how to connect the sensor cables to the cabling box inside the shield, but the right-hand side shows the cables coming out of the shield and into the data logger. So it's just a question of following this diagram on the right-hand side. As you can see, the white cable goes into the 12 volt, the gray cable goes into ground, the violet cable goes into ground, the blue cable goes into 2L, etc. So let's do that. You'll see that there's one cable that is loose. This is that white cable with the little brown stripe around. That's okay, because one of the cables does not have, coming from the cabling box, does not have any attachments to it. So just ignore it. You can put a little piece of black tape on it, or not cut it in the beginning if you don't want to. But since it already has a pin, it's better to cut it and then maybe just kind of cover it so it doesn't do funny things around. And we're done connecting the temperature sensors and the shield to the data logger.